Hi everybody, Jesse Fewell here with a special edition of Morning Fewell here with Martin Olson at Scaled Agile Framework SPC class. I got to tell you, I'm having a blast. For the last few days, we've been talking about how do we take these Agile ideas and deploy them in a large organization. We're actually here in the classroom. So you guys are getting kind of like a first glimpse of things. You've brought a refreshingly unexpected additional perspective on this, that we have the SAFe model.
Right.
And it's on its fourth iteration now,
Yep.
Here in early 2016, which is excellent, right? It shows inspecting and adapting. But you're bringing kind of like an additional perspective on this with systems coaching. What is systems coaching?
So the notion of systems coaching is that when you have a group of people that are working together and they're dependent upon each other for whatever that delivery is. A baseball team is a system.
Okay.
A Scrum team is a system. An organization is a system. That system has its own intelligence, its own energy, its own needs, so that when you're bringing SAFe into an organization, you're altering the system. You're bringing practices. You're bringing new learnings. You're bringing new information into the system, and as such, you need to be aware that you're changing the system. So it's not just the application of a bunch of practices and principles. It's the application of a bunch of practices and principles in an existing system that will impact the system, and you have to understand what that impact is, and you also have to make sure that that impact sustains the system. Because if it doesn't, the system's smart. It's going to reject it.
How do we guide the system to accept these strange new practices, these strange new philosophies and mindsets?
Well, so that's it. So how strange are they? If it's the gap's too far,
okay,
they can't do it. You have to meet the system where it's at, and you have to say, hey, at the end of the day, this is really good stuff. We've got teams, and we've got this program guidance and everything, and we can do teams, and we can do program guidance. And that's not going to be the full implementation of SAFe. That might be to the point so we can't maybe do budgeting
for that
again.
Group who's not ready for the full Monty. If they're not ready for the full Monty.
Well, you've got a journey. You start. It's not. Hey, go do the training and now walk away and do this. That is a model that can work if it fits culturally. So there's a couple of things here I want to be very clear about. One, doing the class is awesome. I enjoy it, and again, I would say that over the last 4 days, you've gotten a pretty good understanding, and maybe a new learnings on, and the model. It's not a flawed model; it works. But again, I think large-scale Scrum will work, right? I'm not versed in those models, so I think the model's good. Secondly, you can't just go do this training, and if you don't understand facilitation, if you don't understand the challenges of change management, and you try to implement this, you're gonna have a long day, right? Because in its essence, you're changing the system, and inherently in that, you're changing the way people behave, and you're changing something that's very near and dear to people: their work, their environment. We're wired that way. Our satisfaction, our identity is often tied to work.
Okay, so with that being said, what would you say would be the top one or two hacks, or the top one or two recommendations as a coach that you would recommend to someone who wants to implement a Scaled Agile Framework to SAFe? Top one or two or three hacks.
Yeah, and they're not even hacks. They're called out. Leadership. You've got to get leadership that understands what they're asking. Overmanaged and underled is the mantra, and it is. It just we organizationally we're structured the way that we are through mergers and acquisitions and happenstance and traditional. We have to have these silos because they're really good. They're easy ways to organize and manage, but they're terrible ways for work to flow. So you have to have a leadership that understands that, and executive leadership. If you don't have buy-in with any change initiative, it's going to get to some level and die out, because the people that I've asked to change, if they don't understand what I'm asking them to do, number one, and number two, the value, the reason why, it's going to be a challenge.
So number one is leadership. Number two would be?
Number two is having an understanding of where you are and where you want to go.
Right. Your as is, your to be,
exactly,
and all of that.
Exactly. And where you want to go is probably going to involve some level of SAFe, right? So if you're using that model, or whatever the framework is, you have to understand how you're organized today, where the system's at. You have to meet the system where it is at.
Yes.
And then you can stretch that. If you want this change, and you want this change to be sustainable, everybody wants to set themselves up for success, right? So you have to know where the system's at. You have to meet the system where it's at. and then you move towards where you want it to be eventually.
This has been one of the critiques that SAFe has suffered, which is that you see this placemat and you say, well, everyone needs to go to that solution. And what you're saying is you design the end state that fits your specific context.
And again, yeah, and the framework calls it out that it's got 9 principles, right? And they're based on Agile and Lean.
Right.
And so folks that want to poke at it and say that, I think it's a misunderstanding. And again, I would ask you. So you came into the class with that belief that it might be too prescriptive. Do you still hold that?
No.
Yeah.
No. That's been really eye-opening, especially hearing your voice as a systems coach talking about it. That number one, meet the system where it's at.
Yeah.
Because they might not be ready to make the big jump all the way over to a certain kind of a scaled agile model.
Or they may be. Maybe they
or
want
maybe they
to.
are. Right.
But if that's the case, wow.
And then number
that's
2,
big.
tailor the end state to the context you're in.
Yes.
And so, and that's no more visualized, or it's visualized best in this new 4.0 model where you collapse an entire layer.
Yeah, if you don't need it. And so yeah, you have to know where you're going, and you have to then support that. So hack number 3, don't assume you send people, so the world, don't assume you send people to a class and they're immediately a systems coach or process coach, and they can do that on top of their job. You have to decide if they're working in the system or they're working on the system when you're doing change management. And you can have people that do both, right?
Yeah.
But you could have, it's a full-time gig working on the system. And at scale and at enterprise. And when you're changing the lives and the process that involves hundreds of people, each individual has to change. Each individual needs some level of support. There's a lot of coaching that's needed there.
That's a lot of work.
And again,
that's the other lesson I'm getting is that this is a lot of work.
Any change is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's not the framework.
Wow.
So again, there's the notion that, hey, we can just go implement it. And you might, absolutely. There are case studies out there where organizations did that. I would propose that the reason why that worked is it fit the organizational culture. The model met the organization where it was at, and it was timely, and it was ready to go.
Others, it might be more evolutionary, might be step by step. Well, Martin, thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure.
It's been a blast, and I'm glad that we got a chance to share it to some people. Thank you guys for listening in. Tune in next time, and hopefully we'll talk to a couple more people from class.
I'll see.
All right.